Good morning, guys. We're going to do Romeo and Juliet, Act 2, Scene 4 today. Excuse me. My camera does not like the combination of lighting and the purple shirt I have on, which probably looks blue. So if my face looks blue, I'm sorry. That's what's going on. Okay, so at the beginning of Act 2, Scene 3, Romeo has left the friars, and the friar says, "Yes, I will agree to marry you." And the reason he agrees is he thinks that it will end the feud between the two families. So Romeo, excuse me, needs to go see the nurse because the nurse is going to give word to Juliet. And remember, he's supposed to send word by 9 o'clock this morning. Okay, so at the beginning of the scene, we have Mercutio and Benvolio being silly, and Mercutio's like, "Where is Romeo?" Benvolio says, "I don't know. I asked his dad, and no one's seen him." And we know that's because he was first with Juliet, and then he went to see the friar. Um, and then Mercutio, of course, still thinks that Romeo has the hots for Rosaline, and that it's Rosaline that is tormenting him. And then we have super duper heavy handed foreshadowing here. Benvolio says, "Tybalt, the kinsman to old Capulet, has sent a letter to his father's house." Mercutio says, "A challenge on my life." And it's a challenge to like a duel, to fight, to sword fight. Mercutio thinks. Benvolio says Romeo will answer it. Okay. And then Mercutio says at the bottom of page 1, the Romeo shouldn't worry about Tybalt because he fights too formally. That's all that Prince of Cats stuff. The Prince of Cats is not a literary reference that we understand today, but it's something that Shakespeare's audience would have gotten. It's like a reference to an old story. Okay. And then Romeo arrives, and Mercutio is mad at him for giving them the slip, according to page 3, because he ditched them the night before. And then Romeo and Mercutio have a play on words with soul and soul. So SOLE, like the sole of your shoe, and then soul, SOUL. And then they also play with the word pink, which has two meanings for them, not necessarily for us. Okay. Okay, then they joke about geese, and again, it's just this play on words. That's all it is. It's like a battle of wits between them, showing which one of them can carry out the joke with the words the longest. And then poor nurse comes in on page 4, and her timing could not be worse because Romeo and Mercutio have been showing off for each other, saying, I'm tougher, I'm smarter. And then here comes the poor nurse. And the nurse looks ridiculous. She is like dressed to the nines, way overdone. And the nurse, like everything about her, you can tell she's not like a lady. She's more of a lower class person. And so she's way overdressed for the occasion. And she doesn't, like, the dress that she's wearing doesn't fit her right. And it's obvious that, excuse me, she's pretending to be something she's not. So Mercutio's first joke at the nurse's expense on page 4 is a shirt and a smock, which he's like, she's a man and a woman because she's so ugly. She looks like a man, which, of course, the actor who was playing the nurse was a man. So, I mean, it's a mean joke, but it kind of makes sense as well. Okay, and then she calls for her fan, Peter, my fan, because she thinks that that's the way that real ladies talk. And Mercutio says, yes, give her her fan so we don't have to see her face. I'm on page 6 now. And then there's some, Mercutio makes a sex joke or a joke about a certain piece of his anatomy, and the nurse like tries to be serious because like a real lady wouldn't laugh at that, but the nurse would laugh at that. So she giggles a little bit. And then the nurse says on page 6 to Romeo, like, oh, sorry, page 7, she needs to talk to Romeo. And we know why she needs to talk to Romeo. But Mercutio is teasing Romeo, and he says, yeah, she's going to ask him on a date because she's like super old and he's, a teenage boy. Okay, and then Mercutio calls her a naughty name. So he says she's like a hare, Hare, and hare then would have been another name for prostitute. So he calls the nurse the prostitute, prostitute. So, like, I kind of get where they're coming from before then. Like, I mean, it's mean, but that to me is just like beyond mean. Okay, so then page 8, Romeo and the nurse finally ditch Benvolio and Mercutio. And, excuse me, the nurse is like really upset, and she's so upset that she's mixing her words all up, and she's like all tongue-tied. And then I don't like you don't have to feel too sorry for the nurse, because on page 8 she says, and he speak anything against me, I'll take him down, and he were lustier than he is in 20 such jacks, and if I cannot, I'll find those that shall. So don't worry about the nurse. She's either gonna take care of him or find someone who will. So she says, if he does that to me again, he's going to pay. And I think the nurse could probably take him. So she can handle him. All right. Okay, so then at the bottom of page 8, we get to the gist of the scene, which is the nurse, other than the foreshadowing with the letter from Tybalt to Romeo, which you know that Tybalt is angry at Romeo for coming to their party last night. And Tybalt recognized Romeo by his voice. That's why he doesn't challenge Benvolio or Mercutio for coming uninvited. He only challenges Romeo because Romeo is the only one that he recognizes. And he can't recognize him by his face because he's wearing a mask, but he recognized his voice. Okay, so the nurse calms herself down. And then she says, my young lady bid me inquire you out. What she bade me say I will keep to myself. So Juliet wanted the nurse to say how much she loved Romeo and how excited she was and everything. And the nurse says, I'm not telling you what she said. I'll keep that to myself. But first, let me tell ye, as they say, let me tell you, if ye should lead her into a fool's paradise, as they say, it were a gross kind of behavior, as they say. For the gentlewoman is young, and therefore, if you should deal double with her, truly it were an ill thing to be offered to, I'm sure that's school calling me. Truly it were an ill thing to be offered to any gentlewoman and very weak dealing. So the nurse wants to make sure that Romeo has good intentions, that he's going to do right by Juliet. Okay, and then Romeo tries to tell her what she wants to hear, and he says, Nurse, commend me to thy lady and mistress. I protest unto thee. I'm on page 9. And the nurse starts talking. And then she says, I will tell her as much. And Romeo says, what will you tell her? You interrupted me. I didn't even get to give you the message. Okay, and then the nurse says, you do offer a gentlemanlike offer. And then Romeo says, bid her devise some means to come to shrift, which is confession, this afternoon, and there she shall at Friar Lawrence's cell be shrived and married. So Romeo says to the nurse, tell Juliet to come to Friar Lawrence's today. Tell her family that she is going to come to confession. Friar Lawrence will hear her confession, and then they will be married. Friar Lawrence will perform this ceremony. Okay, and then Romeo takes a second step, and he gives the nurse a rope ladder. And he says, like, put the rope ladder from Juliet's balcony, hang it tonight, and I will come to her, and we will have our wedding night. So they are going to meet at Friar Lawrence's for the ceremony this afternoon, and then Juliet will go back home, and Romeo plans to come to her tonight for their wedding night. Oh, and Romeo, I messed up the detail. On page 9, Romeo actually says his servant, whose name is Balthazar, will bring her the tackled stair, the rope ladder. Okay. And then off she goes. So the nurse goes to meet Balthazar to get the rope ladder and then to tell Juliet the news. And that is the end of scene 4. So I will see you again on scene 5.